drift from the International Space Station. As our astronauts continue to prepare for today's spacewalk, a little bit of information about the suits and the pre-breathe process so far. At nominal pressure, the suit is about 4.3 psi or pounds per square inch of pressure. And to put that into context, the atmospheric pressure we're used to on Earth is about 14.7 psi, which is approximately the same as the inside of the space station with a mixed oxygen and nitrogen environment similar to what we have here on Earth. The 4.3 pounds per square inch of pressure in the spacesuit is similar to what you'd experience at about 30,000 feet elevation. And that low pressure helps the spacesuit feel a little more flexible, which we really need because the gloves can be kind of rigid, especially during a 6.5 hour spacewalk. So it helps the astronauts flex their hands in those gloves. We discussed the pre-breathe process earlier. That includes about 50 minutes of cycles where we spend 4 minutes exercising and 1 minute resting. That exercise looks pretty simple. It looks like moving your arms and legs just a little bit, but this helps purge nitrogen from their bloodstream to help maintain a 100% oxygen environment. Pre-breathing consists of two phases. In the first, the crew breathes 100% oxygen through a mask to begin purging that nitrogen. And in the second, the crew gets into their spacesuits and conducts ISLE, the in-suit light exercise, again, moving their arms and legs, raising their metabolic rate, and it helps speed up getting rid of the excess nitrogen. Closest to the camera right now and unsuited is NASA astronaut Frank Rubio. He will spend 371 days on the International Space Station before returning home this year, setting a new spaceflight record for any U.S. astronaut. As NASA astronaut Frank Rubio puts the finishing touches on attaching the Safer to NASA's Steve Bowen, our EV-1, Woody Hoberg is going to begin working on Sultan Al Nayati. Teams in Mission Control Houston continue preparing the space station itself for today's spacewalk. That includes inhibiting some of the thrusters on the outside of the International Space Station so there isn't any interference. Additionally, it can include closing some of the shutters over the windows. And eventually, the crew members may be asked to not exercise at certain parts during today's spacewalk. Specifically, that no exercise request comes whenever the SSRMS, or the Canadarm2, as it is more commonly known, is in use. This just helps ensure there are no additional loads being imparted on the Canadarm2, especially when we're moving a crew member from one place to another. NASA's Woody Hoberg will be driving the Canadarm2 today from inside the International Space Station after he has helped get the crew members out the door. As you can see, they've moved NASA's Steve Bowen into the crew lock portion of the airlock. And as Sultan Al Nayati begins preparation for his first ever spacewalk and the first spacewalk for any UAE astronaut, joining us in Mission Control Houston today, watching from the viewing room, is Hazza Al Mansouri. He was the first United Arab Emirates astronaut to visit the International Space Station. So, a very proud day for our friends in UAE. As Woody Hoberg, our suit IV, and Frank Rubio work to attach the safer, simplified aid for EVA rescue to Sultan Al Nayati's spacesuit. We're getting closer to the start of today's spacewalk. Again, you can see that there are no stripes on the spacesuit that Sultan is wearing. This is an EV2 suit. You'll be able to differentiate between him and Steve Bowen once they're outside the hatch by checking out their where there are no stripes on this suit, and there is a red stripe on Steve Bowen's suit. Later in the day, Bowen will be on the SSRMS, the Canadarm2. Looks like Frank Rubio will be our prime operator for the Canadarm2, backed up by Hoberg. As Rubio and Hoberg continue working to attach the safer to Sultan Al Nayati's spacesuit, they are in the equipment lock portion of the Quest airlock. You can't see him, but Steve Bowen is already in the crew lock portion. Once this Attachment of Safer is complete. Hoberg and Rubio will move Alnayati into the crew lock portion of the airlock. They'll then close the hatch and begin depressurization of that airlock, eventually preparing for the external hatch to be opened and our spacewalkers to head outside. Some fun information about the spacesuits as we prepare for these crew members to get out of the hatch this morning. These suits are obviously fitted on the ground for the crew, but they also refit their suits in space to account for any spinal elongation or fluid shifting that has occurred since they arrived at the International Space Station. The suit has 6 layers. It provides atmospheric containment, thermal insulation, cooling, solar radiation protection, and micrometeoroid or orbital debris protection. Engineers on the ground take about 80 measurements to ensure each spacewalker has the best fitting spacesuit, which includes about 16 major elements that compose the suit itself. This includes 3 different sizes of torsos, 8 sizes of elbow joint pieces, 2 sizes of adjustable waists, 5 sizes of knee joint pieces, and 65 sizes of gloves or custom fitted gloves. Now that the Safer is properly attached to Sultan Al Nayati's spacesuit, Hoberg and Rubio are working to move him into the crew lock portion of the Quest airlock. Once our 2 spacewalkers are situated, Rubio will exit that portion of the airlock and rejoin Hoberg in the equipment lock section. They'll then close the hatch and begin depressurization of the crew lock area. Because the International Space Station is just that, international, the time zone GMT is used, so it's at 12:17 p.m. on the space station. These crew members are essentially in the middle of their day. Again, we're looking for about a 6.5-hour spacewalk. That spacewalk clock will begin when their suits are turned on to battery power. A smile from NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg, today's suit IV. He's been helping the astronauts get suited up, along with Frank Rubio, they're closest to the screen. They're both